Hello again, and
Hello?
yeah, and for the first time on the Bisexual Movie Buff Show, a guest returns. Welcome back, Alex.
Well, thanks for having me back. It was a good experience doing that first review, so I thought I'd join you again.
The movie we talked about last time was Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, and when we were originally discussing, before we did that review, any other potential movies to talk about, I said that if we were going to talk about that movie, which is his favorite Star Trek film, then we'd talk about, not necessarily my favorite, but the first Star Trek movie I ever watched, the thing that really introduced Star Trek to me. The movie Star Trek Generations.
Part of the deal.
Yep. Now, as I said in the last review, I grew up more with the Next Generation, and even then, not all of it, but it was the part of Star Trek that I was most familiar with. And I actually saw this movie before I ever even saw the show, and something that I really like about this movie, looking back at when I first saw it, was I didn't have to have seen either the original movies or show or the Next Generation show to understand what was going on or who the characters were. This movie, I do like it, and I loved it a lot when I was little. As an adult, I realized it has quite a few problems, but I still really like it. But that's one thing that I feel is one of its good pros, that you can just get into it and understand it almost like that.
Yeah, where I'm coming from, as you know, I'm a fan of the older cast, so just seeing how this cast compares to the older cast is one of the things that I focus on. The second thing really is, I think that it's interesting to look at the odd and even Star Trek phenomenon, because this one's an odd one, so supposedly not one of the better ones. So we'll see how that plays out in terms of our review as well. But
just to clarify, what did you think of the Next Generation show?
We watched it pretty much nightly growing up, so we were very familiar with it. Again, I have a little bit of nostalgia for the old cast, so I think I'm a little biased towards it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was definitely quality TV, and I think it definitely saved the franchise. However, there's just something about them that I never really fell in love with. There are characters that I like, and then there are characters I don't like, and overall, it's definitely proficient, but it's not proficient with distinction.
I think I understand what you mean. I loved almost all the characters from the Next Generation, but I think I do agree a little bit. I didn't really see as much of a dynamic friendship as the ones that were in the original movies.
And Riker's annoying, but
okay, we'll get to this right now. My least favorite character in the entirety of the Next Generation saga is Riker, played by Jonathan Frakes. I just, kind of like what I said about Uhura, I just feel like Riker has virtually no personality or character. And Jonathan Frakes, sure, he's a nice guy, but I almost want to call his acting wooden, but I think that'd be an insult to wood.
And I agree. I think that's dead on, because I don't think he added too much to that role. And I think one of the things that made the original series most appealing is the interaction between Kirk and Spock, Kirk and Bones. And while there was a superficial relationship between Picard and Riker, you never really got that sense that if they were on shore leave together, they'd be hanging out.
Yeah, like, whenever I watch Picard and Riker, it's all Patrick Stewart that makes the scene come alive.
Mm-hmm.
Patrick Stewart as Captain Jean-Luc Picard, he is just excellent. And Patrick Stewart, he's just a great actor overall. Even in movies that are not necessarily good, I've always thought he did an excellent job. And it's kind of unfair to ask who's my favorite character, because it's just going to be Picard. He is my favorite character, obviously, but if I had to choose a favorite character that wasn't Picard, I would say it was Data.
Oh, no.
Played by Brent Spinner. You don't like Data?
We disagree on that, but
What are your thoughts?
I definitely have grown to love Picard. He's very different than Kirk. He's like polar opposites from Kirk. Kirk is an actor, and Picard is a thinker, and it just seems, but they both have that definite presence, and you can tell that they're in command of their ships. They just have a very different way of going about commanding that ship and in their missions.
Picard,
but I've come to appreciate that.
Picard has a certain level of grace that I don't think Kirk really had, at least when Shatner played him. But
I think Kirk had a certain level of boldness that Picard does not. I think sometimes Picard can be a little too reserved, maybe. But in terms of my other favorite characters, I like Worf and I like Geordi. Probably those are my two that round out top three for me. In terms of my least favorite characters, I think probably Riker's my third least favorite character. And then Deanna Troi as the counselor. Not really sure why you would need a ship's counselor, but just her role and always kind of centered on the love story between her and Riker. I found her character nauseating, and Data was probably one of my least favorite characters. And maybe that's an unpopular thing to say to Trekkies. However, I never really fell in love with that particular character, so that's a significant disagreement, I think.
I guess
to each his own.
To each his own, indeed.
Yep.
I just, kind of like Spock, I found Data's journey to be very, I felt myself get very involved in it, and when he finally got the emotion chip in this movie, I know a lot of people find the way he is when he first gets the emotion chip annoying, but I didn't find it that annoying, and part of the deal is he's supposed to be adapting to the emotions, and he becomes overwhelmed and he can't handle the emotions. Some of the parts were funny, like there's a scene where he opens a sealed door with the technology in his arm. Like, just for anyone who doesn't know Star Trek, Data is a 100% android, and part of his story arc was learning to be more human, and at one point in the show, another android built by the same creator had an emotion chip, but the chip was faulty, and even though the android was destroyed, the other one, and the chip was could potentially go bad, he kept it, because it could be his only chance to have emotion. I found the scenes, as I said, pretty interesting, and I did find them funny. But my favorite funny moment is when he opens the sealed doors using these circuits in his arms, and he's like, stand back, and then he goes, open sesame!
While I appreciate some of the scenes that he's in, I find him half the time nauseating, half the time a decent character. I do like the role that he plays as an officer. There's just some moments, like in the third movie, the Insurrection movie.
We'll get to that.
We'll get to that. But
we'll get to that near the end.
Oh, jeez. Sometimes he's a little too over the top for me.
Quickly going back to Picard, I thought he was a great leader character.
Yes.
And after seeing the original movies, I agree, Picard and Kirk, while different, they're equally great leaders. This movie found a way to, I'll get to it later, but it found a way to show these two in action. And also, Picard was allowed to have some vulnerable scenes, such as the scene in this movie where he finds out that some family of his has died. Patrick Stewart is a very good crier. He's very good at emoting, and
I don't deal well with crying, but that's just me.
It varies for me. Like, if it's whiny crying for some stupid bitchy reasons, I can get a little fed up, but
I usually try to exit the room as quickly as possible when somebody starts crying. But
I hear you, but if it's for, like, reasons that you can relate to, like someone, whether it be family or someone you just loved, has died.
Sure. Oh, yeah. In those type of circumstances, yes.
Yeah, I feel like if handled well, those scenes can be very good.
Yeah.
And moving on to Geordi. played by LeVar Burton.
Who's at a conference we were just at. Woo-hoo-hoo.
Yes, Alex was at a conference and LeVar Burton was there, I think, as a guest.
Yes, in the flesh.
Geordi, half the time I like Geordi. Actually, I think I'd have to maybe say Geordi's maybe my third least favorite.
Mm.
Not that I don't really dislike him, but I feel like he had a few too many stupid moments. Particularly like in First Contact, where he's back. It's where they go back in time, and he has to help out someone from the past, and they have to tell this person in the past about the future in order to fix something that was made wrong. And while with this person in the past, Geordi just keeps telling him about the future, saying it's going to be so great.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought that was a real idiot moment for him. And he had a few weird moments on the show where he acted overexcited. He didn't have the best social skills, the character, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't hate him. He had some very good kick-ass and redeeming moments as well.
Yeah. I like the angle of how they weren't afraid of portraying an actor with a physical disability there with his blindness. And I really liked how they did this in this series. I thought that was breaking new ground.
Yeah, and Geordi, for the majority of the Next Generation show, he wore this visor around his eyes. It was pretty cool looking. And somewhere around First Contact, the second Next Gen movie, they upped the character to have like contact lenses that could help him out with his blindness, like special electronic contacts.
Mm-hmm.
And it was weird to see him without his visor, but I feel like it is the future. They would probably come up with... I'm actually surprised that they didn't have a cure for blindness in this future.
At that point, yeah.
Worf. The first, as ironic as it sounds, humanized Klingon character, played by Michael Dorn. Worf is just... He's angry, he's aggressive, but he believes in honor and he will stick by his crew. And he will do whatever it takes to help them. And Worf is a great one, and I actually said this is something that I've said a few times now, but I haven't said it for the video yet. I really think for Generations, they should have killed off Riker. And
I'm not going to argue with that one.
And for those who don't know, Jonathan Frakes later went on to direct the Star Trek movies First Contact and Insurrection. And while I have mixed feelings on Insurrection, I do think both movies had good direction. Jonathan Frakes, his character should have been killed off so that he could devote all of his energy into directing the movies.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that would have worked out much better.
I don't know if his ego would have allowed him to do that, but who knows. I do like Worf, though, and I think Worf is another good connection between the two different franchises, because Worf did make an appearance in the 6th movie.
Actually, that was his grandfather.
Correct.
But they're the same actor. Same actor.
Right. And I also think it shows the bridge of how the Federation and the Klingons were trying to have more of a peaceful relationship. That there was somebody on the bridge that was a Klingon. So I thought that was also nice to have that diversity.
Agreed. Yeah, I love Worf, and my mom loves Worf. And now to Troy. Counselor Troy. I know you don't like her, but...
I just found her flat. I found her a flat character. But
I disagree. I didn't really find her flat. I mean, yeah, she's kind of there to add some emotion to these stories. And you question them having a counselor in the future. Yeah, I can see the questioning of that, but I think it was interesting to have a character who could talk to the other characters and bring out some good drama scenes.
yeah.
I like Troy. I didn't think she was too flat. I really enjoyed her, and she had some good moments, I think, in Nemesis.
In terms of female characters, I like Dr. Crusher better than Troy.
Yes, I love Dr. Crusher a lot. I do think they didn't use her as much as they could have in the movies.
Mm-hmm.
On the show, she had some great moments. I think her best moments came in First Contact, and where she participates in helping the others survive against the Borg attack.
Yep.
And Gates McFadden, I forgot to mention the names. Marina Sirtis plays Counselor Troy, and Gates McFadden plays Dr. Crusher. These actresses both did a very good job with their characters, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty much all the Next Gen cast. And even though he's not in this movie, I gotta ask, what were your thoughts on Will Wheaton as Wesley Crusher?
I thought he was a very weak character. I'm glad when he did not appear. I just never found him very dynamic whatsoever. Kind of annoying.
I know he's like the most hated character from the Next Generation amongst most of the fans. Me personally, I didn't think he was that bad. I mean, yeah, the idea of a kid who hasn't even graduated Starfleet, flying the Enterprise is fucking stupid.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get past that, I thought he had some, maybe not too interesting, but I thought he wasn't that bad, and I thought he could be fun at times. And he did appear in one of the Next Gen movies. He was in Nemesis for like 10 seconds or half a minute.
That's about right.
At the wedding.
Oh yes, yeah.
It's very brief, but he is there.
Yeah.
That's all the majority characters. Now, before we forget, let's explain the plot for this movie.
A little confusing in my opinion. I like the attempt of merging the two casts. I found the time travel aspect at times hard to follow overall, but
you see, the original cast, when they made the Six movie, most of them were now in their 60s or 70s. Mm-hmm. It was pretty clear these guys were getting too old to be the stars of major blockbusters.
Yeah.
So they decided to the people behind Star Trek decided to take a shot at making the Next Generation crew movie stars. However, they wanted to have sort of a pass the torch kind of thing between these two big sagas. So, for Generations, and I don't know how you feel, but I think it was pretty interesting how they were able to, as you said, merge these two franchises. The film opens with a 15 to 20 minute prologue showing the first Enterprise that wasn't captained by Kirk. And Kirk, Scotty, and Chekhov appeared to send her off to be their guest of honor.
Yeah, I think it was the Enterprise B.
Yes, and the captain of the Enterprise B, although not really that important, is played by Alan Ruck, who many may know as Cameron from Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Captain Harriman, I think his name, right?
Yeah. Yes, that was his name. And the opening is pretty well done, I think.
I agree.
I thought Scotty and Chekhov, I thought it was a little odd for them to be the ones there.
Right, and only them.
Yeah.
Like no Uhura, no Spock.
Yeah. Leonard Nimoy they did try to get him to appear,
mm-hmm.
but he thought Spock was better than just a cameo.
True. But it was an extended cameo, and Kirk was in the majority of the movie, so.
Yeah, and I think this movie was a good final film. At the time, this was going to be the final movie to feature Kirk. I thought it was a good final film for the character, but I thought it was a little... what's the word I'm looking for?
Forced?
No.
No?
I feel like Scotty and Chekhov got a half-ass final bit.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not terrible, but they could have given more. If they wanted it, this wouldn't bug me so much if it had just been Kirk who had been there. But the opening has them on this first sort of small voyage, which is more just for publicity. And while they're out, they get a distress call. And even though this Enterprise has not been fully completed, there's no other ships, and so they go...
Where have we heard that before?
Yeah.
It's like a returning
Yeah.
theme. Yeah.
There have been several jokes made about this.
Yeah.
The only ship that seems to be anywhere when shit goes down.
Is the one not ready. Yeah.
And so they go out and they come across two ships that are about to be pulled into this energy ribbon that's going through space. And once one of the ships gets too close, it blows up. So Scotty steps in and, doing the best he can, he's able to beam half of the people from the last ship before it explodes. And however, the Enterprise starts getting sucked towards this energy ribbon, and Kirk, for a moment, like the Captain Harriman says that he will go down and fix like the warp drive, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he tells Kirk he has the bridge, and Kirk he sits in the captain's chair, looking kind of like he likes that. And this is something I like about the Kirk character. He's a little full of himself, but in the end, he does the right thing. He tells Harriman that he's the captain and this is his place, and he says that he will go down and take care of it.
Saves the day again.
And he goes down, saves the day, but then the Enterprise B gets zapped by the ribbon, and when they find out what parts of the ship were hit, one of them was the deck that Kirk was on, and Scotty... I just gotta mention this because I think it's funny. Scotty, when they can't get Kirk on the intercom thing, he says, "Have Chekhov meet me on deck 15." But with the thick accent that James Doohan did, every time I hear that scene, it sounds like he's saying, "Jerk off and meet me on deck 15." And I'm guessing Chekhov would be like, I'll need a few minutes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that's just what it sounds like. But after that, they go down and they see that the entire deck is pretty much trashed, and Kirk has apparently been sucked into space.
Assumed dead.
Yeah, and the opening was very well done, and the moment where they see he's gone, I thought was pretty powerful.
Yeah.
And then we cut to 80 years later, and we see the Next Generation crew, and they're kind of doing their thing, and they get a distress call as well from a space station.
And I think that they were in the holodeck, right?
Yeah, they were.
I think those are some of the better scenes in the Next Generation TV shows, is when they use the holodeck.
Really?
I thought that helped extend the series, in my opinion.
I love the holodeck stuff, but I know that a lot of Trek fans are a little mixed on the holodeck.
Yeah, when used right, I think it was a good tool.
Yeah, and I'll get to what I was getting to in a sec, but the scene with them on the holodeck where it's a little... The first time I saw this, I was like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah, with the nautical theme there.
Yeah, they're like on a 19th century ship, and then it turns out this is kind of like apparently some kind of tradition they do when they promote an officer. I guess it shows that Starfleet isn't completely tight-assed.
Right, and it's one of the places where, with the Next Generation, you can see that just working together, you can see that chemistry more than you can sometimes in the action scenes in that cast, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a very good, fun scene. Had some good, funny moments, like when they accidentally remove the plank.
Accidentally.
And Data, misunderstanding, pushes Dr. Crusher in the water.
Oh, that Data. Yeah.
And it's funny because, like, she tells him to do something unexpected, like, to be funny. So he just... And then Geordi's like, that was not funny. And me and my grandfather, when we watched that together, we were like, it is funny. But while they're in the middle of doing this holodeck promotion thing, they get a distress call from a space station, which they go out to, and the station is trashed and there's only a few survivors aboard. One of them is a character named Tolian Sauron, played by one of everybody's favorite bad guy actors, Malcolm McDowell. And this character was actually shown earlier as one of the people that was saved from the ship that was going to go into the Nexus. And here he is 80 years later, and he doesn't look like look like he's aged one bit.
Dun dun dun.
Mm-hmm. And what is the deal with the Sauron character? Well, it's revealed that he was actually inside the energy ribbon earlier in the film, and somehow he was pulled out of it, either by the ship that was about to go into it, or when the Enterprise beamed everybody aboard. And
he wants to get back there.
Yeah.
He experienced just that nirvana sense when he was in the Nexus, and he's spent his entire life coming up with this plan he's going to execute to try to get back into the Nexus, to reproduce that feeling. He doesn't care what the consequences are, either, for how he's going to get back there.
The energy ribbon, the Nexus, we later find out through a favorite character from a fan favorite character from the show, Guinan, played by Whoopi Goldberg.
Yeah, I liked her.
And it was nice to see her appear, and Guinan is a very mysterious character.
She's the Yoda.
And has a history with the Q character.
Mm-hmm.
But Guinan, Whoopi Goldberg's character, at a later point in the film when chaos starts happening, she explains to Picard just what the Nexus does. You go in, and it pretty much makes your every dream and fantasy come true. And nothing means anything, you just have whatever you want. And that is what Sauron is trying to get back to. And his plan to get back into the Nexus is very interesting. He has built a missile of sorts that, when launched into a sun, causes the entire sun to implode, I think, or
there's a lot of steps involved.
Send
here.
a shockwave, which destroys whatever solar system it is part of. But that shockwave causes the Nexus to alter its course as it travels through space.
Ever so slightly, so that it reaches the exact mountaintop that he's on.
We'll get in there. And at one point, Picard, when they find out his plan, they actually ask, why doesn't he fly into it with a ship?
Mm-hmm.
Then Data brings up that any ship that even comes close is destroyed.
Right.
So, yeah, Sauron's plan is to blow up another star, alter the course of the Nexus even more, and let it pass through a planet, which he will be on, and have it just take him.
He'll be fine. Spaceships destroyed.
Planets.
Yeah.
You said that a little while ago that you didn't think much of the character Sauron.
Yeah, I did not find him to be a very intimidating villain. He's definitely an atypical villain. And some of the scenes that he was in, some of those action scenes, I thought were some of the weaker scenes in the film. So, I mean, I was never really... You have those just, BA villains that... I think one of the better ones in the Next Generation was the Nemesis. And you just don't have that same sense of foreboding or presence when they take over the scene.
Malcolm McDowell, I think he's a very good bad guy actor, and he did a lot, like Dennis Hopper, he did a lot of villain roles in the 90s, and while they're a lot of fun, once you watch these different movies and compare them, you kind of get the feeling he was playing the same villain each time. The character's interesting, his motivation, like this whole movie, the motivation for the villain, what he's doing, is a little weak, I think. Like, he wants to get into a pretty much paradise. And the more I thought about it, Sauron kind of reminded me of Cybok from the 5th Star Trek movie.
Yeah.
Remember, he...
Yep, that's a good comparison.
Yeah, like Cybok wanted to get to what he thought was heaven.
Yep.
The difference is Sauron actually is willing to kill people.
Yeah.
Which makes him a little more interesting than Cybok. And Sauron did have some good moments, like the moments where he's talking with Picard on the rock planet, or when he's with Geordi talking about trying to be all philosophical. I thought those moments were good. The action bits with him were pretty weak. He's just shooting, and when he actually goes hand to hand,
it goes on forever. They're racing around the rocks, and oh, will he shoot off the rocket or not? I mean, it does go on for a long period. And I don't know what you think about one of the other criticisms of this movie. This is where I feel it the most.
Is this going to be a spoiler thing?
No,
okay.
no. Some people criticize this movie as being like just an extended time period of a TV show, and it didn't feel as much of a movie versus just like a longer next generation TV show. And this is where I felt that the most. And I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
I don't agree. I think Insurrection is the one that felt like an extended episode.
Yeah.
Generations. I guess one of its biggest flaws is that it doesn't feel like an episode to me, like a long episode, but it feels like whoever was making it wasn't exactly sure how to transition from the TV format.
Yeah.
Because there are some cinematic moments in it, definitely.
Oh, good. There's some of the best moments, or at least one of the best moments of the entire franchise.
The ending of the movie, the big climax, definitely felt very TV-ish.
Yeah.
But a lot of the stuff before that felt very movie-like. And some moments that I thought were very movie-like was the space battle between the Enterprise and the Bird of Prey.
Yes, that was good.
Yeah,
Just the aftermath of that, too.
We'll get to that in a sec,
Yeah.
but the battle was pretty good. Them rigging Geordi's visor to find out about the ship. And we never brought this up in the Wrath of Khan review, but you told me that some of the footage in Wrath of Khan was stock footage from the motion picture.
Yes, some of the scenes of the ship. Yeah.
And this doesn't hurt the battle in Generations at all, but when the Bird of Prey is blown up, the shot of it exploding, it's the same shot that they used for the final battle in The Undiscovered Country.
Yeah.
Boy, Star Trek likes to reuse things.
Reuse footage, yeah. But why fix it if it ain't broke, right?
And after this big battle, we get probably one of the greatest action moments that you will see in Star Trek and probably any sci-fi movie. The Enterprise has been damaged, and the Enterprise can separate. You have like the back part, which pretty much is what drives the ship. Then you have the saucer section, which can be separated, so they have to separate from the engine, which is gonna explode. They do that, but the engine's explosion causes the saucer to just excel towards the planet. And we get another one of Data's, for me at least, funny moments. They're about to go down. He sits there and he's like, oh shit. It's just funny to watch him getting that emotion, and also it has been said in a few others, but you rarely hear like heavy curse words in a Star Trek movie.
But it was appropriately used.
Yeah. And the Enterprise, it comes down into the planet's atmosphere, and it's just gliding right down.
Yeah.
And then it crashes right into the planet's surface, just in the soil and the woods. And the crash is just awesome. It really... I'm pretty sure they use models, because I don't see any CGI in that scene. But it was excellent model work. They really They really did everything.
Plowing through the surface there.
Yeah,
Yep.
Industrial Light and Magic really excelled in doing this effect. It was, I love the crash, and it's almost impossible to describe what a thrill it is to watch it. I just, go watch the movie and watch the crash scene, and you will get exactly why it's awesome.
One of the better moments of the entire series.
And then there's when the Nexus actually hits the planet. Sauron actually succeeds, it seems, and the Nexus comes in, takes him, but it also takes Picard, and the shockwave from the sun being blown up destroys the planet, and we see the Enterprise get destroyed with it. And the first time I ever saw this movie, I really was wondering what's going to happen next. Because, as I said, never seen the show or anything else. I wondered, did they just kill all the other characters? And then we see Picard in the Nexus, and earlier in the film, he was mourning the death of his nephew. And his dream, his fantasy in the Nexus, is that he's married and he has a family.
Yeah, because for him it meant the end of the Picard line. So, just that was very significant to him emotionally.
Yes, and these scenes I thought were actually really touching to watch.
Yeah, with the whole family aspect, I agree. Yeah, dynamite acting.
And then Picard, when marveling at just how beautiful everything is, he suddenly remembers just where he is and what has happened. And, well, I think this part of the Nexus is handled beautifully. This is a big problem I have. Earlier, Guinan, when she told Picard what the Nexus is, she said that if you go in there, you're not going to care about anything. All you will want to do is stay in the Nexus. And the problem I have with this is he did care about getting out of the Nexus.
Yeah.
Like,
he's above the Nexus. He's more powerful than the Nexus.
Yeah, I had issues with that part, and what appears to be a ghost of sorts of Guinan appears, saying that she is a part of Guinan that was left behind in the Nexus, like a part of everybody who went in stays there if they leave.
Yeah.
And she explains to Picard that if he wants to go, he can, and he says he will.
A little convenient.
But he needs help, and she tells him there's someone here who could help him, and lo and behold, it's Captain James T. Kirk.
Woo!
And this I thought was a pretty cool way to get these two captains who couldn't possibly have been in the same timeline because Kirk would have been really old or dead at that point anyway. This is a cool way to have them meet when they're both sort of in their good years.
Yeah. It is kind of hard to kind of piece together all of the circumstances, but it is a good way in terms of the plot line of how to get them to meet.
The scene where Picard comes across Kirk in his own little oasis, it's a little awkward, but it's also kind of well done. Like, Picard tries to... his way of explaining who he is and what's happening, both from a character standpoint, his way of explaining, I thought, was as well as he could have done it. And Patrick Stewart delivered the awkwardness but desperation pretty well. But I kept thinking it was kind of funny and, well, not funny haha, but funny uncomfortable. It was just awkward how Kirk kept trying to cook during this conversation.
Oh, I never even noticed that. Just hanging out at his ranch there, but I never noticed the cooking part.
Yeah, it was kind of funny, like he's making food, and while Picard's explaining...
Didn't Kirk have somebody to do that for him?
Yeah, Kirk asked him to...
It's James T. Kirk, for crying out loud.
He asked Picard to help him cook. So yeah, they're having this big discussion about fixing what went wrong while making eggs. But there were also some good parts, like Kirk, he is stunned that he's back at his old house, and he sees a bunch of family heirlooms, and he sees his old dog who apparently died 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
No, wait, it was...
Not his son. His son's not there. His dog's there, though. But...
Yeah, and then...
Oh, well.
And also, apparently...
No David.
Apparently Kirk, in between Undiscovered Country and the Enterprise B sailing, apparently Kirk had a girlfriend who he regrets not marrying.
Oh.
Yeah, like a serious relationship.
She was the one.
Yeah,
That's what he told her.
This character, I can't remember her name, but she was supposed to be like the one he wishes he had married.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels odd to see him feeling this kind of emotional and want attachment to a character who was never in any of the original movies.
Mm-hmm.
And I agreed. I wonder why David wasn't there.
Yeah, Carol Marcus.
And then Kirk, he starts going on a horse ride. And I read that horse that Shatner rides, that's his own horse in real
Oh,
life.
I didn't know that. That's a cute little connection.
Yeah, William Shatner is actually a very skilled horse rider.
Oh.
And I wonder if this scene was there just to show it off. But what follows is a good moment. He's riding the horse and he jumps a trench. And then he jumps it again, and he says every time he jumped that he felt scared because it was a risk. Except now he doesn't feel it at all.
That's how he knew.
Just realizes that the Nexus isn't real. And again, that's two people who overcome the temptations of the Nexus.
Yeah.
And I just thought this joke where, going back to what Guinan said, you're not going to care, you just want to stay in the Nexus. I'm feeling like, you should sue for false advertising. Yeah, I thought the Nexus would be a little stronger than that.
They're a little too self-aware, yeah.
And even though their scenes are limited, the interactions between Kirk and Picard, I thought, after the whole cooking thing, were pretty good. And just one captain relating to the other.
Mm-hmm. They were equals. Yeah.
Yeah. And then when Kirk decides to go back and help stop Sauron, he says, "Who am I to argue with the captain of the Enterprise?" And I guess because, I don't know if it's his ego or just because he became so enamored in the character, William Shatner said that was the hardest line he's ever had to deliver in his entire career.
Yeah. Even bigger ego, yeah.
And then he has this good line that's funny but also touching. If Spock were here, he'd say I was an irrational, illogical human for taking a mission like that.
Mm-hmm. So
they go back and they have what was really built up but came off as very underwhelming of a fight.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's one of the weaker scenes.
And I talked with my friend Mike, who actually likes the original show from the 60s.
Oh.
And
there are people out there like that?
Yeah, and Mike, he likes Generations a lot. He says, more than I probably should.
Mm-hmm.
But he actually likes the final battle. And his reasoning for liking it is that I told him watching it, it felt like a cheap fight you'd have on a TV show.
Mm-hmm.
And to him, he thought it was like the movie's way of paying tribute to the original show, which was where Kirk got his start.
Yeah, the hand-to-hand stuff, yeah.
And I can understand that, but at the same time, this was going to be Captain Kirk's final appearance in a movie.
Mm-hmm.
J.J. Abrams wasn't here yet.
Mm-hmm.
This was going to be Kirk's final moment on film. I think his final battle should have been more epic in a way.
Yeah, it was kind of a whimper. Still saves the day, but
yeah,
it was
but
a whimper.
and the way that they killed off this beloved character, it was actually even worse in the original version. The original way they killed off Captain Kirk, Sauron shot him in the back and he died. That was it. And the test audience's reaction was so negative that what we got was their idea of
Kind of a revision, yeah.
And I think if they were gonna try and revision it, they could have put much more effort. I mean,
Could have died in space.
he does save the day, but dying under a bridge, I know everyone's bitched and moaned about this, but it is kind of a cheap ass way to go out.
Symbolic, I suppose, yeah. But
And I also thought his final, right before he died, his last words were kind of lame. He says about the battle, it was fun. But then his final two words, I thought, kind of made the scene, made up for a few things and made the scene a little moving. It's when he's like this, then he opens his eyes and he says, "Oh my," and he just looks shocked. William Shatner improvised that moment, and he explained it was meant to be Kirk reacting to death.
humanizing, yeah.
I thought that was a good final moment.
Yeah. Still the overall anticlimactic.
And what follows is a very confusing scene, even for me when I was 10. Picard takes Kirk's body and he buries him under a bunch of rocks and Picard puts his own Starfleet insignia on the rocks. And it's kind of a touching burial, but I'm wondering, Kirk came back to the real world. I would think that maybe Starfleet or...
Michael pick him up after?
Yeah, I'm wondering, why are you burying him on this particular planet? And what really bothered me was there's no scene afterwards where Picard talks with anyone about meeting Kirk. Which makes me wonder, did he even... I mean, I'm sure he did, but the way they filmed it and edited it, it's almost like the scene before never fucking happened. It just... I don't get it.
Well, the only thing is that wasn't their insignia also what they touched when they wanted to be beamed up? So maybe that was a locator device to be able to find him later. But they don't mention it ever again.
Yeah.
I mean, they give Spock a funeral for crying out loud, and they never mention... they never mention Kirk.
And then they go the Enterprise, and once again, this Enterprise is totaled. And Data gets a kind of good emotional scene where he finds his pet cat. And I thought Brent Spinner did a good job of him being overwhelmed and feeling happy to see his old, his pet, who he obviously, now that he has the chip, can care about. And I'm only bringing this scene up because I think Brent Spinner genuinely, he came off like he genuinely loved this thing. And it's funny because in real life, Brent Spinner hates cats.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
And when he asked, he didn't want to do this scene originally.
They could have gotten a dog, maybe.
He said, couldn't he just find Geordi?
Yeah. His good time pal.
Fun fact, just a bit of trivia. Malcolm McDowell got death threats because he killed Captain Kirk in this movie.
It's a little too much.
Not trying to offend, but Trekkies.
Might want to get a little reality check there. But
Yeah.
the writers could have gotten a death threat. I don't know why.
People don't generally care about who made some movies. And, let's see, did I miss anybody? And that's pretty much everything I can say about Generations' storyline and its characters. There's only a few more I'd just like to acknowledge. The two Klingon villainesses.
The Duras sisters.
I thought that was their name. I heard Doug refer to them as that.
Mm-hmm.
Doug Walker in his Nostalgia Critic review.
Mm-hmm.
And I wondered, is that their real name or is he making a joke?
No, I think they're real. It's the Duras sisters.
Yeah.
They had an appearance, I think, in the show.
They were played by Barbara March and Gwyneth Walsh. Very good, slimy, evil Klingon women.
It was a very nice Klingon portrayal there. Yeah.
And I didn't recognize him, but Brian Thompson, an underrated 80s action bad guy actor. He was the villain in Cobra. Played a Klingon here, and he's a pretty good fit for a Klingon.
A lot of people have played Klingons. You got John Larroquette, Christopher Lloyd. I mean, a lot of random people that you wouldn't think of.
Tim Russ, this is just random, but one of the crewmen on the Enterprise B in the opening is Tim Russ, who would later play the Vulcan Tuvok on Voyager.
Oh, I never watched that.
I've seen parts of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of fun. Gives us some good gives us a hologram character and a Borg turned good guy.
Oh,
Good woman.
that'd be uncommon.
So all in all, I still really like Generations. It was the first movie that introduced me to Star Trek. And while I'm not as huge a fan of Star Trek as him, and certainly not as other people, I do enjoy the franchise a lot. Something that I feel like the Star Trek movies suffered from was, with the exception of 2, 3, and 4, none of the movies really had any continuing story arcs, or really carried anything from the previous movie.
Mm-hmm.
The original movies definitely acknowledged stuff that happened, like the death of Spock.
Mm-hmm.
But with the Next Gen movies, I love the Next Generation, but the Next Gen movies almost never acknowledge anything that happened in the previous, aside from maybe Data getting used to his emotion chip.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like you could just pop in any of them at any time.
Right, they were episodic. Overall, I do think it was probably a B. That saucer crashing scene was definitely a redeemer. The appearance of the old cast was a redeeming factor. So even though it was a B, wasn't one of the best, I do think it was probably one of the better odd-numbered Star Trek movies overall. Right there with number 3, probably.
If I have to rank it, I'd give it maybe a 7 out of 10. So yeah, that's everything I can say about Generations. You?
Yep, that does it.